So the first question is, if you had coding experience going into this, what was it? I had no coding experience going into this class or into this unit, except for the 1 hour freshman year that they had for the hour of code for us. Second question is, were you apprehensive, and if so, about what? So I was a little bit apprehensive because I had never done anything like coding before. However, I wasn't too worried originally because typically I am good with computers and I thought that would help me, but I soon realized that being good with computers does not mean anything, and it was actually much harder than I had anticipated, and it was even frustrating at times. What were you excited about learning to do? I was excited to be able to program things to make them do what I want them to do. I was just excited about coding, learning how to code in general, because it's something I've always wanted to know how to do. I just had no idea where to start with it or whatever, which is why I had never actually tried it before on my own. Recall the most frustrating moment you had during all of this. Talk it out. What were you trying to do? How did you figure out how to solve the problem? So the most frustrating moment was when Kai and we thought our video game was completely figured out, but there was actually one part that was not working. We were trying to make it so in our game of rock, paper, scissors, the microbit would calculate your result for you based off of what you select and what the other person selects, and it would display your result across the screen. However, for some reason, anytime Kai would select scissors by pressing both buttons, it wouldn't display his results. But it would still display my results on my screen, but it wouldn't display his results on his screen. But this was only when he would select scissors. But any other rock or papers, it would still display his result. We figured out how to solve this problem because we realized that this was only the section that when he hit both buttons, it was the only section of his code with elif statements instead of if. So then we just changed all his statements to if statements, and it made it work. Did you always feel productive? I didn't always feel productive because there were days when I got completely frustrated with the code and felt like I was making no progress. Those days I felt unproductive because there was nothing to show for all the work that I was putting into it, and I also felt unproductive because at times when I did get frustrated, there were times where I would just sit there for a few minutes because I was just so stumped and needed to take a break. So I felt like there were days where I was less productive than others because there was nothing to show for my work, especially since I would have to restart some of the time because there's code that was completely wrong, and it would be better if I just restarted it and attacked it from a different angle Okay. I felt a lot of this project was about self-learning. What did you teach yourself to do, and how did that feel? I taught myself the basics of coding, which felt pretty good because it kind of gave me something to work off of. And I also learned how to make two microbits communicate with each other. And learning how to make two microbits communicate with each other was very hard for me at first. I didn't really understand it because I didn't have yet the basics under control. So it was pretty hard for me to step up to the microbits communicating. And then, how did that feel? So when our video game finally worked and the microbits were communicating perfectly, it felt very accomplishing because I was apprehensive about being partners with someone at first because I had no idea how to make two microbits communicate, and if I worked alone I wouldn't have had to do that. But I am happy I did work with Kai because it taught me how to make the two microbits communicate with each other, and it also taught me how to persevere through the frustrating times of learning and how to make our code work. And so that was just, when we finally got the code to work, it was just so relieving, and I felt like I taught myself something that I never thought I would teach myself, and it was just a relief. Okay, what was the one thing you're most proud of when it comes to this project? I'm proud of Kai and I finally being able to get the code because we struggled for so long because we both had never coded before, and it was hard for us to understand what we were doing wrong, why what we were doing was wrong. But when it finally worked, I just felt proud that we both persevered through it because there were times when, especially like right before the due date, when I was like, I don't know if we're going to get it done because we kept having to restart and reattack the code from a different angle. But when we finally got it, that was my proudest moment because I persevered through it and we finally succeeded what we wanted to do. Instead of letting the code do what it wanted to do, we made it do what we wanted it to do. What did this teach you about yourself? It taught me that no matter how frustrated I got, I have to persevere because I will eventually get it, which was hard for me to see during the process because there were days where I just remember I was just like so frustrated. Like I would just code and nothing would happen to be like line error, or it would say on the Mew that there was nothing wrong with the code, but then I would flash it onto the microbit and it wasn't doing what I wanted it to. If it even did anything at all, there were times when it would just be blank and there would be nothing displayed. But yeah. Anything else you wish to say? I would like to say I'm thankful that I got the opportunity to learn how to code and will probably be continuing to code, and that now I have the basics under control of how to code. And I just appreciate that. No matter how frustrated I got, Mr. Soul was he was helpful in helping me figure out what was wrong with my code or what I can do to change it to make it better. And he was also helpful in when I would get frustrated, he would like make me laugh and make me forget how frustrated I was. Well, not really forget how frustrated I was, but to take my mind off of it for a second and just take some time, come back to it, and figure out the code.